a Playlist original.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Back to the Blockbuster with your hosts, Gaius and Jackson, episode 113.
That's right. Yes, I had to check myself before we started recording.
Yeah.
Now the trend. For whatever reason, after 100, they've just been harder to follow what episode we're on. But
yeah, they really have. And 113. Oh, and a quick shout out, kudos to Playlist, because we recorded 112 last week for Fruitvale Station. I got so busy with like work and other stuff that I forgot to send it to Playlist right away. So I sent it to Playlist yesterday, and I was like, wait, what did I forget to do? And I was like, oh, I forgot to send the episode to edit. So thankfully that episode had like no editing notes. Like it went really well. And it kind of went straight through. The only thing they did was add the TV spot at the beginning of the episode for Fruitvale Station. And they got it out today when it was supposed to come out. So thank you for getting it out on time, even though I was stupid and sent it to you guys late. So I just wanted to say that really quick.
They do a lot of legwork for us behind the scenes. So we're very appreciative for what they do and the platform that they give us. So yes, thanks a lot, Playlist. I know we did have an episode recently that we probably gave the editor some work to do. So appreciate
But they got through that too, man.
Yeah.
I guess I guess we should think of for that too. That was, I mean, there were, I don't have them written down. Maybe I do. There were like 5 or 6. 8, no, maybe more, maybe 7 editing notes than that. And I had to for the greater good. Not that I don't love listening to our episodes. I mean, it's great when they're finished. I like listening to them, but I had to like go back and listen to that whole thing and then mark down when it dropped out and then how long
came.
And then how long they were. And good job, because listening to it, I would have never noticed it. So also good on them for doing that for us. And I apologize in that email at the beginning. I was like, hey, so sorry, but this is what happened. But Ben, for when he started communicating me one-on-one, because I used to just go through someone else and give them our editing notes who worked for Playlist, and he was like, it's just easier if you just kind of talk to me about what you need for editing. And he said, as long as you let me know like when the time step is or where a mistake is at, it's easy to like go to it and fix it. So I was happy that we were able to do that for him, but I'm sure it wasn't an easy task. So thank you for that one as well, on top of getting that other episode out today on time.
Yes, thanks a lot, Playlist. You know what? For the 40 or 50 episodes that we've recorded together, I'm surprised at how little interference we get with. I mean, it's definitely, we've had our moments, but generally we've been pretty lucky. So yeah, especially filming across the continent from each other, it's it's pretty impressive.
I think our first one was when my power went out, and that was that sucked, and we couldn't do it until we tried to fix it, and we just did it the next day instead. But I felt so bad that day. I was like, oh fuck, because I know everyone's time is precious, dude. And
I've had breakers blow and go out too multiple times during a few episodes earlier on. So it's I like a curveball every once in a while. It keeps us on our toes, but it's good to learn how to go through things. And like I guess the audience would never really see how we adapt to that sort of thing. And it's just funny, like from the podcasting angle, having to navigate issues like that. But it's always good to have something to keep you on your toes.
And then you just kind of pivot. And then I like going on Twitter and other social media sites and looking at other people's podcast updates and knowing that they've also gone through or are currently gone through the same thing.
It's universal.
Like, we lost a whole episode and stuff. So yeah, not alone in that. You get through it though, and you just figure out how to get it done. But you're right. For like, we've recorded a lot together, and it hasn't really happened. You would think it might happen more, considering like the distance and
exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, we've been
how fickle technology can be.
we've been blessed, I guess, to have as little issues as we've had. But start off the episode on sort of a dismal note. Just wanted, with that aside, I wanted to get to, I guess by the time this is dropped, it should be about Thursday, Friday, but on Monday, August the 7th, we lost a truly great filmmaker in William Friedkin, passed away at age, 83, I think he was. Very sad to hear that news. You're the one actually that broke the news to me. I didn't know until you'd mentioned while prepping for the episode that he'd passed away. So yeah, very sad to hear that. He's directed a couple of my all-time favorites, including Killer Joe, which we just covered as a deep dive, the episode you guys had me feature on. So yeah, rest in peace to one of the greats, Oscar winner too for the French Connection. Yeah, very sad to see him go.
Yeah, I mean, it's first of all, I tried to look up to see if there was like a cause of death yet, and they didn't. From what I read so far, they didn't list anything. I mean, he was 87 years old
soon. Yeah. 87 he was. Okay.
This was a surprising one because I feel like maybe because I was discussing, oddly enough, The Exorcist Believer with someone, and someone sent me an article where William didn't sound too enthused about what they were planning on doing with
He's not alone,
the quote unquote legacy sequel. And he was pretty blunt about it, and I think that is kind of a testament of who he was as a person and filmmaker. He wasn't ever afraid to speak his mind,
right,
and make very hard decisions, whether it was things he said in the media or even the stuff he did in film. It was on brand, basically, being completely brutally honest about how he felt about that particular project. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Everyone was tossing around all of his movies today. And it's been a while since I've seen The French Connection. Of course, I've seen The Exorcist a million times. And part of me was like, do I save that for October, or do I watch that tonight just to in his honor kind of thing?
Yeah.
But I've never seen a movie called Sorcerer that people have been tossing around a lot today.
That's one that I've seen by him that I would recommend too. That movie is tight as nails. Super good.
It's cool. I went on Twitter today, and one of the guys posted a screenshot of the Sorcerer physical copy on Amazon, and it's out of stock. And apparently, it wasn't out of stock earlier today. I mean, people probably wanting to get something of his, a physical copy of his, and went and bought it up. So I mean, so stuff like that. I mean, there were movies I hadn't something like that. I even heard of it before.
It's like super low key, but it's the one he did after. I think he followed up The Exorcist with Sorcerer, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I was reading a little bit about it. They were talking about the title of the movie, and I forgot what one reason said they called it that. It had something to do with the film itself. But then they said that another main reason they named it that too was they wanted to have some kind of close tie, at least title-wise, like, oh, this guy made The Exorcist. Even though this is nothing like that, let's make people think it is, so it could sell tickets. And I kind of
that is so even strange to me.
Apparently, that came out in 1977. So even in 1977, studios were thinking how do we piggyback off of someone's earlier success? But yeah, I mean, I guess for the most part, most people would know him from directing The Exorcist, which is if you're going to have one movie, that could be the one, right? I mean, it's a great film, and someone brought up today, when people bring up the scariest movies of all time, that is either in their top 5, might be their number 1.
Mm-hmm.
Probably nothing lower than top 10 for a lot of people when they're talking about the best horror movies of all time.
Holy shit, that turns 50 this year, actually. Did it already it must not have had its anniversary yet, because that'd be a good one to cover, especially now that he's passed away this year. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, so now, no, you're good. No, you're good. I've at first, since the Legacy sequel comes out in October, I was like, well, we have to talk about the original, but now talking about it around then in a different way, as opposed to just linking it to that, whatever that's going to be. Try to be positive. They released a statement today too, very professional one. David Gordon Green and Jason Blum, since they are doing this movie. Ellen Burstyn also released a very nice statement too regarding his passing, because I know that she was pretty honest about what the filming conditions were like on The Exorcist. But I think at the end of the day, what it brought out of them and what it brought out of that project, years removed from it, was probably worth it. In the long run, what he was able to get out of them by putting them through literal hell, for the sake of good filmmaking and good storytelling. I mean, I think with a little time, you start to probably appreciate the process that he put them through, being a part of that. But this got to a lot of people. I mean, I never know sometimes when icons like this pass away, what the reaction's going to be, especially when they're older, especially if I saw a lot of people who knew a handful of his movies that on Twitter, and then I only saw some that maybe only knew French Connection, Exorcist, and that was it.
Right.
And there's a big debate amongst them. Was like, well, does that make him a great filmmaker, but not knowing that he has other stuff that he's done. But even if you were just to say The French Connection and Exorcist, those are still two really great movies. And then you get into like To Live and Die in LA, and like there's a lot of stuff that he did other than The Exorcist. Nothing wrong with that being your magnus opus, right? That's going to be like your thing that they can put that on your tombstone, then that's a good one. Because it's someone made a good point too about The Exorcist. Not only is it a groundbreaking horror film, but it kind of transcended horror, where it was the first one to really be acknowledged in a highly critical way, where it got awards attention, where it was nominated for Best Picture, and Ellen Burstyn was nominated, and so was Linda Blair, and it really transcended that genre, and probably arguably was the first horror movie to kind of leap into this little kind of prestige kind of field in the industry, and that should be applauded too, because you don't really see that a lot now, unfortunately, with horror movies.
Definitely not. But you're right. That movie, obviously having not been there, I don't know for sure, but I quite the understanding of the cultural impact that that movie had when it came out. I remember even seeing photos like posted on theaters saying like just warning people have left by ambulance from screenings from it because they had passed out or had otherwise been so disturbed by what they'd seen at the time that it had come out. And like you just don't, it's very rare, like once in a generation you kind of get a movie like that, it feels. So even after all these years, 50 years later, it still holds up as one of the greatest. And back to the point, like that is definitely the movie he'll be remembered for. But even that being said, like William Friedkin had directed many fantastic movies, even if you take out that and his Oscar-winning French Connection, like he still had quite a few titles to his name to be proud of, and that is the testament to how great he was as a filmmaker. But definitely responsible for some of the best in horror, which you and I are particularly appreciative of, and I'm really excited to get a rewatch of The Exorcist. And I think I skipped it last year around spooky season because I'd seen it too many times, but this year I think this just locked in, having to celebrate that movie this year, and I'm looking forward to it. But very sad day.
Yeah, it's and just because we were lucky enough to cover Killer Joe because you picked it when you hopped in on our deep dive spinoff, and we got to talk about that. He directed that film, and that kind of during that episode, I brought up a movie called Bug that he directed in 2006. It's also kind of an underrated gem. It's not for the faint of heart, and it's not for everyone. It's a hard movie, but it's really that's the kind of movies he made though. He was right. I think what I appreciate most is that he seemed to not really succumb to, if he did get it, a lot of studio pressure. Like he wanted to make the movies that he wanted to make, and that was that. So I can respect that wholeheartedly. And it's a tough one. I mean, but to have the kind of filmography that he had, and then have, like you said, I mean, I guess what the good thing about that comes out of this is people will discover other movies other than The Exorcist or The French Connection, and they'll watch something else. That being said, I think during spooky season this year, a lot of people will be watching The Exorcist, maybe more so than they would originally thought to watch it. I mean, it's interesting because it's getting like a 4K release soon. I think next month.
That's a must.
I put in my bid to Warner Brothers. They sent an email like, "Do you want a product review copy?" I was like, "Please." I'll take one, please. And even if I don't get one for free, I will still buy it. Even though I probably have like 3 or 4 editions of The Exorcist already.
See, I just have the regular old DVD. I need to upgrade. But just curious, what would a brand new like 4K release of a movie like that go for? Like retail right out the gates?
I think right now on Amazon I saw it for like 28 something. I don't know how many extras and stuff are on it. Like when they first put it out, it was usually they're in the 30s range when they first announce them, and then after some time they go down a little bit sometimes right before they go out. There's some that kind of stay in that range. There's some that are a little bit more expensive. Like It Follows has a 4K. Even though it's being released overseas, only it's a region free edition, so you can actually play it on your 4K player if you live in the States or Canada, stuff like that. And but that's going for like $49.
Holy fuck!
Because but I pre-ordered it just because whatever, I want it.
Nice, definitely a movie you close.
But something like The Exorcist, like $28. I think that's a good price for a movie like that.
Yeah,
and it can replace my Blu-ray copy of it. Still looks pretty good. But if I could have like a definitive ultra HD copy of it, I'll take it.
I very well may treat myself to a newer, higher quality version this time around this year. So, because I gotta upgrade.
Man, that's how I felt when I was watching, because we're doing an anniversary episode of Pirates, and I didn't realize I only had Curse of the Black Pearl on DVD. I thought I had it on Blu-ray because I have some of the sequels on Blu-ray. So why wouldn't I have like the first movie on Blu-ray? But I was like looking, and I was like, nah, I only have it on DVD. And while it sounds amazing, like it sounds
my God, phenomenal. Yeah. I watched it today.
The picture is like, oh yeah, I need to upgrade it. Like this movie deserves to look better than what it does on this giant TV. So, but yeah, that was just another example of that. But yeah, man, I mean, it makes me I need to buy it or find Sorcerer somewhere so I can see it. So that was a movie that was coming up the most, other than it was like, I guess movies I didn't really know that was coming up a lot from cinephile pages on Twitter. They were just like, hey, like Donnie, who was actually on this show with our Scream episode, he enjoys the movie a lot. Said he even enjoys it a little bit more. Yeah, he said he enjoys it a little bit more than The Exorcist. So I was like, wow, I mean, that's a winning endorsement. I was like, I need to see this. Yeah, because I had never heard of it. So yeah, need to discover new stuff.
I've been trying to find like a movie just like during this conversation to compare Sorcerer to, and nothing really comes to mind. It just seems to stand on its own. It's very much just like a really tight script about just one little mission in Latin America, and there's not really any implications outside of like the immediate story, and it's pretty like airtight. It's, I don't know, there's a lot of movies like kind of like that just have a really small scale point A to point B storyline, and that's kind of where it falls in, but it's just really well executed and very tense. And great movie for those who haven't seen it. Good rainy day watch.
Well, I'm definitely gonna seek it out now because I've too many people brought it up that I was like, I have to like check it out.
I'm surprised to hear that it got all that hype. I didn't realize how popular it was like amongst his filmography. It just kind of seemed as like one of those, because he has many movies that he's directed that I don't really hear much about, and I kind of thought maybe that was somewhere amongst those, but it's nice to see that it's got some love.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the cool thing too, because I mean, I can't really call it a smaller movie because I just because I've never saw it or heard of it. Maybe amongst cinephiles it's not. But that's the cool thing though, like, you know, movies like that will get kind of pushed to the forefront of it, and people will share them, and they'll get a little bit more recognition now, along with his other great body of work. It's always a bummer when you lose. I mean, I guess like a lot of our filmmakers are at that age now where
I don't like to think about it.
It's like, you know, I mean, like it's so, and you know, I didn't know. I mean, like you said, the cause of death hasn't been revealed yet. I hadn't heard anything about him being sick or anything like that, so it was definitely a surprise. But I knew as soon as I saw my phone, like the email popped up, and it doesn't. Yeah, on your phone it doesn't have the full thing. It just said his name and then the comma. And I was like, this is going to be what I think it's going to be. And I opened it and I was like, fuck. Yeah. But
you're totally right. Man. Yeah. To a great, but you're right. We are approaching an age where we are going to lose a lot of classic, amazing filmmakers, probably back to back to back. A lot of the boys are aging out, but 87 though, that's a good run. That's not young by any means. So congrats, William Friedkin, for living a long, illustrious life and leaving a lot of great cinema behind for us to enjoy. We appreciate.
Yeah,
I agree. Kind of moving on to other horror related topics. Scream VII has found its new director. I didn't really know. I kind of thought it was locked in that the Radio Silence team was going to be directing the next one. Did this come as a surprise to you that they found another director, or had you known this was sort of that they were looking?
Yes and no. So I thought because of the success of 2022, and especially the sixth one that came out this year, you know, it's the highest grossing Scream film domestically, and came close to almost being the highest grossing Scream worldwide. It was pretty close to when it left theaters, that they would try to keep them. But then I also kept hearing that they were in demand for a lot of other stuff. Right. And I think Radio Silence really wanted to do it, but they have this untitled monster movie at Universal that they're super excited about, and they were doing that. Melissa Barrera is actually going to star in that as well, so that'll be her third movie with Radio Silence. And what I noticed is that Paramount Pictures, as much as the credit I can give them for revitalizing the franchise in a way where when they promote it, you can tell they care about it and they care about the fans in one instance. You could tell that they also want to rush these out because Scream 2022 came out and came out in January of 2022, and then we got Scream 6 March of this year. That is a pretty quick turnaround as far as, you know, filming and releasing it. And the fact that like it got great reviews and did really well, as I guess a testament of like what Radio Silence did with it, and their screenwriters as well. I mean, maybe they had an idea already for a 6th film, and that's kind of what why it might have been easier to rush it out. But what I've gotten the impression with Paramount again is even with the strike, because like you can't really do anything right now. There's a writer's strike and there's an actor strike. It seems like they still want to rush out that 7th movie, and they don't really want to wait for Radio Silence to be done with their Universal Monster movie, especially now that Universal Monster movie is kind of on pause, even though they were filming it because of the strike. You know, once the strike's over, they had to jump back into that movie and finish what they need to finish. So that puts them even further away from being able to do Scream 7. Right. So I was bummed to hear that they weren't going to be involved, because I think they are a big reason why these last 2 movies have worked, because you can tell that they attacked them as fans first of the franchise, and they wanted to respect what Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson did with those first 4 movies. And so I was bummed losing them, but on the back of that news, hearing that Christopher Landon is going to be directing Scream 7, I was pretty okay with that, because he kind of has a meta horror background and sense of humor. So he gets his screenwriting career started kind of with Disturbia with Shia LaBeouf
I didn't
in
see that. I was
2007.
going through his filmography and I didn't notice that he had written that. That's awesome.
So like that movie is kind of like a play on like Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window. It has like a modern twist. So he already knows how to like kind of reference other movies in a way where it's like, like it's almost like a homage to that. And then after that, I guess the big example of like, what he could do with Scream is that he did Happy Death Day and Happy Death Day to You as well. Happy Death Day, it got really good reviews when it came out, made a lot of money, and a lot of critics compared it. One critic at Deadline said it was Groundhog Day meets Scream. So it was like he was already getting the comparisons already. And then Freaky, the kind of play on Freaky Friday, where the teenage girl switches bodies with a male serial killer. That also has a funny kind of meta slasher vibe to it. So he kind of is already in that wheelhouse where I think it could work. I guess my only concern is I don't know if anything was planned for Scream 7. So I don't know if they're like, hey, let's continue the story with the core 4 and see what's up with them. Or if Christopher Landon, I don't know if he's working with the same screenwriters that Radio Silence was dealing with, or I have no idea. So I don't know if it's like, all right, are we going to deal with the core 4? Are we going to do something new? Of course, Scream fans, whenever there's a new director or writer announced, the first thing that spread across Twitter was like, figure out how to get back Neve Campbell. I mean, of course, I get it, but here's how I feel about that. I would love to have her back, but I also thought Scream 6 worked just fine without her. And agreed. And it didn't need her. I kind of, even though I love her presence in Scream 5, the more I watch it, I'm like, I guess it feels like she was kind of shoehorned in a bit to that narrative. Even though it was fun to have her back, but you take her out of it, then there's still a lot of movie, and it can still go on without her. At this point, I only want her back if it's necessary to the story, and if it's agreed. I don't want like a really cheesy cameo. Neve Campbell's I don't think she wants Sydney to die, so like an opening scene kill, that won't be good either. No, it has to matter to bring her back. I guess my other thing I'm cool with Christopher Landon, but if they didn't want to wait for Radio Silence, are they going to wait for Jenna Ortega, who's also very busy? I can't imagine that they wouldn't want her. That they wouldn't want her in it. Like she is like. I think she's a lot of. She's not the star, I guess. Right now, right? Yeah, no, right.
You asked me. I think she outshines. Is it Melissa or Marissa Barrera?
Melissa Barrera. She does outshine.
I think she outshines her. I think she's really the foundation of the Scream movies going forward. So if there's any good, if there's anything to bode about the movie going forward. I would imagine she would be a big part of it. Like her involvement would be like fundamental to the success of the next one going forward. But one good thing, I guess, hard to classify it as good, but all things considered, like they're gonna be forced kind of to wait before they move into any production on this movie, what with the strikes going on. So hopefully that will work out in the movie's favor and give them time to maybe really plan out. Because although that like they wouldn't be writing or like start production on the movie, like I imagine like the writers and people that are going to be behind this movie creatively with nothing else to work on, I'm sure they're going to start thinking and planning how they're going to approach the movie. So hopefully the strike can help in that regard. Yeah,
because the strike has no control over your thoughts, so you can think you can think about what you're going to do, and as soon as it's over, pour all those thoughts onto like paper, like your laptop, whatever you need to do to get it done. But yeah, I mean, I don't know all of her projects offhand, but she was in the middle of filming Beetlejuice 2 when they had to shut that down because of the actors strike. I know she has Wednesday season 2 that she has to do. She has a A24 movie with Paul Rudd that she's in as well. And then she's attached to another independent movie with it's her, The Weeknd, and a couple other people. I forgot who else is in it. But it's also was a priority for her to get that out of the way. Not out of the way as in like, but they really wanted to like move that ahead because they're really oh God, why am I blanking? Whoever made the movie, they made like a really big kind of almost Oscar awards season kind of movie either last year or the year before, and like it's their follow-up. So that's why they really, really want it to get done right away.
Who was this? What was the movie?
Let me I'm gonna look it up real quick because I don't want to make sure I get it right. Because it was a pretty big deal for her to do it to the point where she was actually rearranging her schedule in order to get it done. Then this is pre-strike though, so I don't know how much changes after that. The person that directed Waves, Trey Edward Schultz.
Right. Yes.
It's their follow-up. Yeah. And Barry Keoghan, whatever we call him. Yeah. He's also in it.
Oh, sweet. Right on. Yes. Trey Edward Schultz is great.
So,
I love
so she's busy.
Yeah, she's a busy young lady and keeping that way. I think that's fantastic. She's definitely she has massive momentum behind her. And again, I think Scream 7 will be way better off with her involvement. So I can only imagine they're going to be waiting for her. Of all the core four, I think she's the most. Yeah.
It's her to a lesser extent, Melissa Barrera, and then the other two. Nothing against Jasmine Savoy Brown or Mason Gooding. They're both very good, but one of those girls is. I mean, when they were doing box office tracking for Scream 6, they factored her in as a reason as to why the movie was going to open as well as it did. So I think I think they're in a position, like you said, they're forced to wait now. But like, how much longer will they? What kind of deals will they arrange with her people? Like, okay, well, when can she start filming? How much? And how much do you want her in it? And then I don't even know if they're going to continue their story. I mean, it's all up to Christopher Landon and. I mean, if they keep the same writers that worked with Radio Silence on the other two, maybe you do continue the story of the core four. I felt like after Scream 6, it didn't feel like their story was over per se. Like you could still do some stuff with them. But I guess even if it did end there, I guess that would be fine. They all survived. Yeah. They all survived like relatively happy ending.
I feel like that group of characters needs like a trilogy for it to really all come together and matter. Because then
I think so too.
Series is just broken up between 4 movies of Sidney Prescott and the gang being the leads, and then 2 kind of random movies that followed a little bit later with a different group of friends that didn't really have much of a satisfying conclusion, if you will. Even though it does kind of, you could end the series at 6, but it doesn't feel like it was really working towards being wrapped up. So I think the 7.
It felt like it was intended to be a new trilogy, and it would end with 3 movies. And then of course, years down the line, if they want to make more, they would do that. But I think that it seemed like that was that seems like that was the intention, though. That like have 3 new movies with these characters. All I ask of Christopher Landon, old screenwriters or new screenwriters, whatever the case may be, just be brave enough to kill 1 or 2 of them.
Yeah,
I was low key because I liked their chemistry. I wasn't upset that they lived, but I mean, they escaped some pretty massive knife wounds, and they all survived.
That
last
part,
movie.
Mason Gooding in particular, even though he was one of my favorite presences in the movie, I think him surviving kind of took me a little bit out of the movie. As much as I did enjoy Scream 6, especially after 5, there were some decisions that were made that I was like, okay, come on, you got to sometimes, take a leap of faith here, and even if you don't think the audience is gonna react, I don't know, but his death or his almost should be death in particular, definitely I was like, come on here, kind of had Walking Dead vibes for a while. But
Mark Parker, who's been on the show a few times, I remember when he did the Scream episode with us, he mentioned as a detriment that he thinks that the radio silence guys love their characters so much that they didn't really want to kill them. Like they were too afraid. They were too afraid to do that. And it's crazy because when they did Scream 5, they made it a point that they had to kill one of the original people, which is they ultimately decided would be Dewey. And they said they knew they couldn't do Sydney and they couldn't do Gale, but they had to do one of them. And it was so crazy that they were willing to. Yeah. That was so crazy that they were willing to do that for 5. And when it came to 6, they spared almost everything. I mean, they just killed a bunch of new people.
Yeah.
That were new to the 6 movie. It was cool to have Kirby back, but if she died, I would be like, all right, well, it was cool to have her back for a movie, but I mean, they have to. I mean, like I said, it's a hard position to be in because I liked all those characters, but being objective, I'm like, one of them had to go, and I agree with you about Mason Gooding. Like that knife scene with him, it was like he appeared to die. I really thought that how I thought he really, my brother, who that was his favorite character in the movie too, when that was going on, I could hear my brother audibly go oh no. And he really thought he was going to be the one to go. And then
I remember watching that scene and being like, hey, that's it for his character. There's no way he's coming back from that. And Gale has numerous instances in the next movie, in the most recent movie too, where it's like, hey, she's not surviving that. So for both of them to have made it out of that movie alive, I agree. In a sense, because of how 6 went, Christopher Landon does have a little bit of some pressure on him to really go where the radio silence guys didn't. Although credit to them for bringing life into that series, he kind of has to follow that up and make probably some tough decisions. But I can't really speak in terms of excitement for his involvement because I haven't seen anything that he's written or directed. But as you mentioned, with his sort of meta slasher movies that he's written and directed already, I think that they have found a good director to fill their absence. So, all the power to him. I hope he does a good job with 7. And I'm grateful, I guess, that they're kind of forced to wait, because I think the movie would be better off, especially changing directions like that, to have put it out too close without a lot of time to consider where to take the story would have been, I think you're getting into murky water with that.
Yeah. So. If it comes out too close and you have a new director, you would really be able to tell there's a different voice behind the scees.
You know what it makes me think of is the Star Wars sequel trilogy and how that went when they switched directors. Yeah.
Oh, like that, having a huge franchise like that and having no plan and just being like, okay, whatever.
Just so hopefully they can learn from that mistake. Yeah.
Yeah. I honestly think you would like the Happy Death Day movies. They're pretty funny. I mean, they really blend the horror and comedy really well, and the sequel goes full on there. It blends a little bit more science fiction into the whole time repeating itself and everything. It's really, and then it's just really well written and really funny. And that movie, those 2 movies came out of nowhere for me, especially the first one, because I didn't really see a lot of promotion for it when it came out. When it did well, I was really surprised. It was one of those things that I felt like on the Thursday, I was like, oh, let's go see that. And no one really talked about it. And then by the end of the weekend, a lot of people had seen it and thought it was really good. And then Freaky, it is really good. And unfortunately, it was released during COVID, so it was basically sent straight to video on demand. It had a little run in theaters that were kind of open at the time. I think if theaters were open fully, that movie would have done pretty well. At least relatively to its budget. It was really cheap movie to make. I mean, but Catherine Newton, who plays the girl, and Vince Vaughn are both very good. And when they have to switch bodies, Vince Vaughn does a very convincing teenage girl, and
I'm just she's actually very good now. When you mentioned Vince Vaughn, I remember hearing about this movie because it rung a bell, but I didn't really look into it. But you're right, that trailer was actually pretty cool. I'd be interested in checking that one out.
What do you think the Scream franchise? Do you think it keeps going? I mean, because 2 really good, well-reviewed movies in a row. I think the fan base was mostly happy with them.
Right.
But I think there's also the little murmurs that are like, but it seems like it still plays it safe and it's like the same thing that it's kind of always been.
I'm in that camp. Yep.
What do you think it has to do? I mean, like, what can it do to really change itself now?
I'd say it almost certainly has to kill one or two. Let's say a legacy character from the old camp and one of the newbies, if not two. Like, it's definitely got to sacrifice some big players to stay relevant, I would say, and not just be formulaic of several of the past movies. That's a fantastic question, though, because like we're now approaching 7 movies in a franchise that has already kind of done or commented on everything that you can about a horror franchise. Like the last couple movies in particular with the new group have really kind of touched base on the commentary of like the legacy series, like how many
elevated horror and all that.
Elevated horror, exactly.
Elevated horror, yeah.
I think they've kind of run out of tropes to really cover, so I think this would be a good chance for them to kind of reinvent or bring something else to the table. What that will be or what it should be, I don't really know. I'll be interested to see it when it comes out to see what they did, but I think this, if they play it too safe, I think this could and should be the end of the series. As much as like I love Scream, 7 is a lot for a series, especially one like that's as meta as this. Like eventually they're going to run out of stuff. So I don't know, but I can agree. It certainly has to deal with, saying goodbye to a couple or a few good long-term characters from the franchise. Certainly.
I think that's true too. And I love the last movie. I saw it twice and I watched it recently again on 4K. Thank you, Paramount, for sending me a free copy of it. Awesome. But I think what's kind of hard with the franchise now is when the first movie came out in '96, there's a lot to make fun of in the world of horror. And actually, as each one progressed, there was a lot to make fun of. I mean, so the first one is just a play on like, slasher movies and making fun of horror movie cliches, and that was fun. The sequel, in a really brilliant way, was like, hey, sequels are never as good as the original, so just in case that sequel wasn't good, they get like, oh wait, we already said we weren't going to be as good, but then they actually ended up being almost nearly as good as the first one, right? So it was able to comment on that. The third one isn't great, but that one kind of commented on the whole, like it did the whole doing it in Hollywood and making fun of that kind of situation a bit. The fourth movie, ahead of its time a little bit, it kind of commented on the whole reality TV craze before it became like huge and being a star based on the fact that you are famous for nothing. If you watch Scream 4 now and within the landscape that we live in with reality TV, it feels like, oh, that movie would have hit a lot better maybe a few years later.
Right.
And then with the new ones, right? They made fun of the whole recent rise of like kind of prestige elevated horror films. They made fun of the whole bringing back your legacy characters for like a requel, not quite a sequel, that thing. And I think Scream 6 played it safe in a way where it was almost like a remake of Scream 2, where it was like, oh, let's comment on like,
yes,
we may not be as good what we did before, but like this, let's make fun of that. But now I think it's harder to make fun of horror movies because we have so many good ones. So like there's so many recently good ones that it's hard to poke fun of them, really. I mean, we've gotten a lot of really solid entries the last few years, and unless something truly stupid comes out between now and Scream 7, I don't know what they can really poke fun at anymore.
You know what? Actually, I'm thinking, what could be a direction they take, and this is completely speculation, but I would kind of like to see if they were able to cleverly tie this into the story. But what with like studios being the big enemy in Hollywood right now, I think it'd be kind of cool to kind of paint a parallel between studio versus independent horror and see how they could kind of play.
Oh, that actually be really good.
That would be.
And honestly, a lot of Scream fans, like I said, like Scream 6 felt like it was almost like I hate to say copy, but they really did borrow a lot from Scream 2. Some people said like, well, could Scream 7 do what Scream 3 did? Was Scream 3 was like put it directly in Hollywood because they were making it. They were in the middle of creating another stab movie, and for all the issues that movie has, there are some really fun set pieces where like Sydney's on like the Woodsboro set on like, and it's like a whole replica of what Woodsboro looked like in the first movie. There's like a whole fun chase scene with that. I mean, with your idea, they could take it back to Hollywood and kind of make fun of that whole like studio horror movies versus like independent horror movies in some kind of way.
I think that'd be kind of cool.
I don't know I think it needs a fun setting to be in too on top of that, because even though it's filmed in Canada, doing the whole New York thing for Scream 6 gave it a whole new life, I think, instead of like going back to Woodsboro and doing that over again.
Agreed.
So I think you need a fun new setting to put it in. And like you said, I think you have to be brave and kill off a beloved character. Yeah. And I agree with you. It should be a legacy one, and it should be one of the newbies who's becoming kind of a legacy character at this point, right? At that point, they'll be in 3 movies. I know they don't have a lot left, right? We have Sydney, legacy character, Kirby, and Gale. I'm trying to think of who else you can bring back that they haven't brought back yet, but I think that's it. And I think they're too afraid to kill Sydney.
Yeah.
I don't know if killing Kirby would be enough. But she is a fan favorite. She's a fan favorite. But
if
like,
she was in 5 and 6, I would say yes. But just her involvement in 6 is not enough for her death to be that impactful.
And I think because I know we have a few people that listen to us that love Courtney Cox, they love Gale Weathers, but I think that would be the one.
I agree. I love her too, and I love Gale, but I'd say I think she should have gone in the 6th one, to tell you the truth. Like, but
right. Because I thought it was actually when I watched the 5th one, I was like, all right, when Dewey died, because that scene actually is good, because you're like, oh, you feel, because you've grown with him through 5 movies. So doing that, I thought was now the person who did it, we're supposed to believe that it was Amber, even though she grew about like 3 inches, and I don't know how that happened, sure. but it was still an effective scene, because it was like, it was handled, it kind of laid on it, where it's like, oh, like the death lingered a bit, like while the whole, like the way he was killed, and at least he got to die a hero and that kind of thing too. So there was that scene worked, and it's probably one of the better ones in the movie, even though you're losing a beloved character. I mean, I get it, guys, horror fans. I would feel some kind of way if I watched Neve Campbell die in one of these movies. I would be like, one half of me, I'd be like Harvey Dent Two-Face, like I respect it, and the other half of me would be like, well, fuck you, movie. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I get it. It's not easy.
No, but
at all.
Very interested to see what becomes of that movie and all other movies that are in pre production right now, because the strike will.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's hard to get excited for, like, oh yeah, this is coming eventually.
Yeah, that's really the only timeline we're made to work with right now, because it's hard to say how long this stuff will go on. But
I want to point out too that Christopher Landon apparently signed on pre-writer strike. A lot of people have been wondering, like, if that deal was made, because you're not really supposed to make deals like that. But they said that he was already in talks before, because I think they knew they were going to lose them to that Universal movie. And it's something that they've really, even though it's unclear what the Universal Monster movie is, it's something that they've been wanting to do for a really long time. And they were actually going to jump in.
Decision by that.
Yeah, they were going to jump into that before Scream 6, and then Paramount was like, please, let's get this out faster. So they actually postponed it to do Scream 6, and I'm sure they're happy that they did. But like, now they get to do this passion project, which, I mean, I didn't know Melissa Barrera was going to be their girl, but I will say this: I thought she got better in Scream 6 than she was in 5, and I liked her in The Heights. So, but I just think that, like, maybe just because she was like right next to Jenna Ortega, who, like I said, was acting circles around her in most scenes.
Right.
It was just hard to. I don't see. She's a beautiful girl.
Yep.
I just think that, she's not quite polished to me yet. Like, she's done some.
I agree.
Good individual moments, but like there's some work, I think, that she can do. But maybe they can bring the best out of her again. Like,
you can't expect her to be at the top of her game so early in her career. I'm just hoping at least we see more development from her as an actress going forward. If she's not improved since Scream 6, I will have been disappointed, but I have faith in her. Especially working with directors that she'd be familiar with. I think that will be
right.
And that'll be a testament to their directing too, what they can bring out of her. Because I would say that on that front, what they brought from Melissa Barrera, I've been impressed by, but there was enough to enjoy between those two movies that it, wasn't necessarily that much of a detriment to me, but we will see what happens. But
we will see.
Also in the same sort of vein in terms of like horror and sequels and prequels, this is the bit of surprise news that we didn't discuss yet before filming. I was curious to see if you'd heard this yet, but saw an article saying that the directors of Talk to Me, Danny and Michael Filippo, still don't know how to pronounce their last name. They actually had already recorded or filmed rather a prequel to Talk to Me, focusing on the the first scene of the movie at the party, and apparently it'll be told from like this cell phone, social media perspective. So probably like found
almost
footage,
like found footage.
Yeah, from probably an iPhone. So that has already been filmed apparently, and they're planning on releasing that, all about that opening scene at the party, which I thought that was super awesome. It really harkened back to Ty West filming Pearl and X.
Oh, like Pearl, and how that kind of like those discussions that they had on X, where they're like, hey, let's like talk about that backstory, and then that is what became Pearl, and I guess ultimately what became like Maxine, which will I guess see that this year, hopefully.
Yeah, it's slated for this year, but I honestly doubt it right now, but it's supposed to.
Yeah,
but we'll see. Have you heard about that? Or
that is really cool. I saw something on that. I didn't read the whole story, but I'm glad you brought it up because I think that's a really cool idea. It's funny because like they just put out the pre-order for Talk to Me for the 4K. There's like a Amazon exclusive with like one cover and another cover with like just the hand, which is kind of pretty cool. I didn't even know which one to pre-order, so I haven't done it yet. But that seems like it'd be a cool thing. I mean, that they could probably throw in there. That'd be like really awesome to kind of see.
I agree.
I wonder, do you think that could work like theatrically as well? That they could actually release it in a way that it could be viable as a theatrical release?
Well, you know what? In the vein of A24, I would encourage them to do it anyway as an experiment and see how it goes, because that's a studio that likes to take risks and deliver stuff that might not be guaranteed success. So like we've seen even this year with Beau is Afraid. So if any studio is going to take an approach like that, I'd say A24 would be the one to do it. And I hope they do, because I would love to see that movie in theaters. And found footage by no means lost on audiences. We've had successful ones, and it would be cheap. Yes, that's a great point. It wouldn't really there'd be not much risk there, so I'd say why not?
Yeah, I say go for it. I mean, we're gonna talk about box office later, but Talk to Me held on pretty well for a horror film.
Awesome.
Even though I think it's in 8th place, it's just because there's so much stuff out right now. Yeah. It held up. It dropped less than 50%, which is like 50% or more is usually the horror movie drop. It's usually the horror movie drop, even when it's a big one. But I say go for it if it might work. I mean, it seems like more and more people I saw on Twitter saw it this weekend, and they were like kind of wish that they saw it on opening weekend, so it was more to talk about, really. Right. But a lot of people I'm kind of happy to see, because I'm not alone. They had that feeling of like it stayed with them like for days after they saw it, like where they're just like, oh, I can't stop thinking about it in a that's a sign of a good horror movie. So
100%. Another A24.
I would love to see that kind of I love to see that prequel, because I think that opening scene, there was a lot in there that you could dive into. It was, I mean, it's a really great opening for people who haven't seen it. It's a jolt for sure. But I like that idea. Actually, forget my idea, just throwing it on the 4K Blu-ray. I mean, go for it. Like, why not? And A24 are aces at marketing their movies, their projects. I think they can market this very, very, very well. So I'd be down for that, because I would want to see more of that.
Be curious to know how the approach to that release will be taken. What with the strike? Well, it's an Australian movie. Would that have any effect on how they can release it, or if they can do it well?
So
how does that work?
I think so. I think it depends on how this goes. So like I brought up that Jenna Ortega, Paul Rudd, A24 movie. They're able to continue shooting. Like certain SAG gives out certain waivers to people to continue shooting, because A24 is technically an independent studio. Right. So if it's a movie distributed by A24, they're able to do it. Okay, but they do have to get almost like permission from SAG to do it. And there are a few independent movies out there post actor strike that are moving forward with those permissions from SAG. But it really depends, because A24 is not they're not represented by the company that represents the studios, because they're independent, which is why people like Mark Ruffalo and so many other people during the SAG stuff were like, hey, we need more independent studios to make movies, so we don't have to rely on the big studio system in order to get things done. So so I think they could, and then also being an Australian production too, I imagine they would be able to because I thought it was really cool. Those directors, they said even though their actors were not members of SAG, in solidarity with the strike, they had their actors not promote Talk to Me. They promoted it. The directors themselves did all the social media stuff They appeared at a couple of cons, like over different places to talk about the movie, and they were just like, "Hey, our actors aren't part of SAG-AFTRA, but we wanted to show our support by, having them not promote because that's part of the rules." And I thought that was cool that they did that. And
they did a hell of a job.
Look, and their promotion alone, plus what A24 is doing, is helping the movie over here is doing really well. So
great.
There's that. Yeah, I would love to see that. I would love to see that prequel. It doesn't even need to be too long. Give me like solid 80 minutes, maybe.
Yeah. I hope that's where they aim for, because as we already kind of know, I guess, or we got like the story of that mythos, I guess, like this. It's really what we're here to see is just what led up to that opening scene. I think that's all we need to see to have a convincing movie. So they don't really have to go to too many different new places. I don't think. Well, they could be. It would be cool to see a little bit more of an origin, but I think there's still a lot of room for that to maybe become a franchise. Even though, like, I don't think everything needs to be franchised. Even if there's some sort of like loosely connected movies, I think like the premise of Talk to Me, there is a lot to still explore there in terms of the origin of, the main item from that movie. So I'm totally on board with the prequel. I say give it to me, and I would like to see even a sequel too that could be loosely connected. Doesn't have to be direct by any means, but even if it stood as a standalone, I think that's fantastic too. It was very original and refreshing, and great movie to come out of Australia. The first time in a while I'd seen something from out of there. So yeah.
I mean, I think by the end of its run, we're looking at a movie, at least in the States, that's probably going to do like 35-40 million, and that's good for a movie that costs $4 million. So like that's
crazy.
And like, it's weird. It's interesting because it's performing almost in the same fashion as Hereditary, as far as the word of mouth being pretty solid. And Hereditary had like a $13 million opening weekend and turned out into a $44 million domestic gross. That means it had some legs after that opening weekend. Definitely. Despite its D-, or I forgot D- cinema score, it still was able to.
So crazy
because I think people that even saw it that were like, oh, like that wasn't as good as critics are making it out to be, still were like, but they were wrong. But I think they were telling it to their friends, and their friends were like, all right, let me check it out on my own to see if I feel the same way. I think it had that kind of interest too, even from people who were like, I didn't like it. I think that kind of, in its own weird way, helped a little bit. And then you have people like us who are like, that movie was great.
Great is right.
But
yeah.
I'll never forgive that cinema score, man. I'm like, okay, whatever.
Like, doesn't even make sense to me at all. Like, I remember when I think you covered that last episode or fairly recently, and that was the first time I'd even like bothered to hear about what that movie's cinema score was, and it doesn't even feel real to me. I don't understand the gripes with Hereditary at all. Above and below one of the best horror movies ever. So, but anyway, people. I'm just surprised that so many people unified in their opinion about that movie. But I get it. It's not for everybody, but
not for everybody at all. But at least we have it. We'll die on that hill.
Yeah, exactly. For sure. I bet it'll age well. I can see it becoming like a. I guess at this point,
years from now. That's going to be I think Hereditary. Maybe not Midsommar. I mean, maybe that needs a little bit more time. But I think Hereditary, in the grand scheme of like great horror movies, when you talk about them years from now, Hereditary will be on that list.
I don't think Midsommar has the battle ahead that Hereditary does. As far as I understand, I could be wrong because I haven't really looked at the scores, but I feel that movie is even more well regarded than Hereditary. Hereditary years on, which is crazy. Wow.
I think something about it, even though that movie's weird too, was a bit more straightforward than Hereditary.
Very much so. Yeah.
But even though it did go like it made like a hard like, but it was still like I think still relatively straightforward for especially what we got. We get Boy Was Afraid after that. But yeah, I think I really think Hereditary, in the grand pantheon, when you talk about like Exorcist, Rosemary's Baby, you'll throw Hereditary will be in there
for me. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
and hopefully in the future too, more people will wake up and come on to that movie. But if anybody's looking for good spooky season's right around the corner, for those who have not seen Hereditary yet, could not recommend a movie faster than I would that in terms of horror.
Add it to your spooky season list if it's not on it.
If I had,
you could probably have a whole. You could probably have a You could probably have a whole A24 spooky season if you wanted to.
At this point, for sure, a lot of great ones.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. All right, so what we got next? Our favorite DC.
Okay. So
DC
I'm interested to chat
stuff.
about this. This is so how How official is
I don't even know what to say about it. Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I was like, did our girl Gal Gadot like talk ahead of turn? Because, but what was interesting too, it came from her. So it was a comment that she made, and comicbook.com picked it up first. And it's just a quote about Wonder Woman 3. And what she said was, I love portraying Wonder Woman. It's so close to and dear to my heart because she's promoting a new Netflix movie that she's in. And that's where they were talking to her about it. And she said, from what I heard from James and from James Gunn, Peter Safran, is that we're going to develop Wonder Woman 3 together. That is a far cry. Well, you know what? Usually James Gunn comes out ahead of this and will say like, oh, that's not true. He's pretty vocal about that. Like, oh, like you guys, that's just the internet going crazy. He hasn't said anything about this. So that makes me think that there might be a hint of truth to it. Because usually he could have been like, no. And then someone made a point that when it was announced that they weren't moving ahead with Patty Jenkins's Wonder Woman 3, everyone was like, oh, you're getting rid of like Gal Gadot, Henry Cavill. And now he didn't mention Henry Cavill, but with Gal Gadot, he said, I never said that we were getting rid of her. And he did say that in the beginning. This is a really interesting discussion because remember when Wonder Woman came out, the first one, everyone loved it. Everyone loved her. It was like the best thing that the DCEU had done at that point, right?
Right.
And then I guess Wonder Woman 1984 soured a lot of people against the brand, but everyone seemed to still like Gal Gadot.
Right.
So what I'm looking at now is that people are like, well, it's confusing now because either reboot it entirely, like you said you were going to do, and don't bring back any of these characters, or because you're confusing your audience, I think. And they're like, well, we don't really need her back. And then there was this whole ages thing too, like, oh, she's 37, Henry Cavill's 38. So like, why are you keeping her and getting rid of him?
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, the difference is, Henry Cavill's 38. But James Gunn's Superman movie is a young Superman, so it can't be a 38-year-old Henry Cavill anymore. Whatever he does with Wonder Woman is probably not going to be a young Wonder Woman. She can be 37. And by the way, Gal Gadot looks better than most like 20-something, so who cares?
She could pass for like 30, 31 if you ask me. Like, I don't think she's definitely not aged out by any means.
Not at all. I just thought that it felt a little like talking out of turn, not like you can't say, but it felt like maybe something that wasn't supposed to be known yet.
I agree, because this came as a shock to me. I can't put myself into the mind of those guys and thinking that this is in any way, shape, or form a good idea going forward. I get, it would be helpful to bring her and the audience that loves her as Wonder Woman going forward in the new DCU, but again, you're just shooting themselves in the foot. This is, if you ask me, a terrible idea. As good as she was, like,
I think so too.
If you want to go in a new direction and create a new universe, that to me would involve severing ties with everything pre DCU, and I don't think this is a very wise move. But I've been curious to talk about it since I heard about it. It was only a couple days, but very odd decision. And there's talks too of including Henry Cavill in a different role, I think, in the DC.
Yeah, I heard that too. But yeah, I kind of agree with you where I didn't know how to feel about it. And I kind of understand the confusion amongst most fans. Like, is this like the DCU a proper reboot, or like, how do you pick and choose who stays, who goes, what's important, what's not important? Right. I think it's just kind of muddied the waters even more.
I agree. And like, just not the foot I think they want to be starting out on going forward. If they're going to be completely revamping everything and going forward in a different direction creatively, I don't understand. I feel like the only option is to, have a hard start. So it's just very interesting. This is just not news I expected that we'd ever be covering. But then again, it can't be easy to restart. But
and I get the appeal of wanting to keep her because, like, she was, at least in the first movie, beloved in the role. People liked her. Mm-hmm. And I also wonder when they said we're developing it together, like, how involved is she in said development? Because she was also involved in the development with Patty Jenkins on 1984, and that was not so great.
No, but that was also the first one Patty wrote, I think, herself, right? Or like, or had writing credits on. So I feel like that's probably where a lot of the problems for that movie come from. But I feel like she's earned her, she meaning Gal Gadot, by the third movie, if this does go forward, probably should earn a producing credit. She should have some
Credit.
say in the character.
But
she's earned it now. But
I also thought this was an interesting point too that someone made, because when James Gunn and Peter Safran took over, Shazam: Fear of the Gods is already done. Flash is already done. They could have she has cameos in both movies. They could have easily cut them, and they didn't. They kept her cameos in the movie. So they were like, maybe they knew that they were gonna not do Patty Jenkins' Wonder Woman 3, but they were gonna keep her around in that same capacity. I'm happy for her, I guess. I just think it is kind of confusing from a greater universe standpoint, because now it's just like more. I mean, we talked about Blue Beetle and stuff. Like, I don't know how important these movies are anymore. And another story came out this week too, where they're like, "Oh, it doesn't look like Aquaman's moving out of December." I'm like, cool. I mean, I guess open whenever you open. Like, open whatever you open. I guess I don't know. Yeah. But
what a
it was.
This whole thing is
because like normally you'd be excited about news like that. Oh, they're making a third one with her. Like, but it's so confusing as to what's happening with it that it's hard to
really commit to feeling one way or another. For sure, I agree. If anything, I take it as like negative news, not for Gal, but just overall for like for the series going forward. However, like they already don't. DC's already middling in enough different, separate, unconnected universes right now. They have like 3 that they're juggling, and so I just don't get the logic here. But it'll be fun to follow, at least to give us something to talk about. But I don't know. I don't think this is in their best interests, like Peter and James. But we'll see. They're the ones at the helm of this ship. They know what's best, you'd think. So maybe it could be just a matter of trust the process and see what they're gonna do with it.
Yeah, see what happens.
Yeah.
Well, in other DC news, since I'll give you the surprise one I'm going to throw at you. Dwayne Johnson was on Kevin Hart's Peacock kind of interview show, Heart to Heart, and they brought up the subject of Black Adam. And Dwayne Johnson said he's still a bit perplexed as to why they're not going to move forward with Black Adam 2. He explained to Kevin Hart, he was like, I think that Black Adam got caught up in a vortex of new leadership. It was so many changes in leadership. Anytime you have a publicly traded company, and you have all those changes in leadership, you have people coming in who creatively, fiscally are going to make decisions that you may not agree with philosophically. He said that, he was in development on Black Adam for 15 years. And then, initially it was planned for 2021, but it was delayed because of COVID. It eventually came out October 2022, made $393.3 million worldwide, which is not amazing for a big movie like that. It's also not a flop, I guess.
Right.
And then it also received mixed reviews from critics, even though it does have an 88% audience score.
88%? God.
Yeah, audience score. Generous. Yeah, but he continued on. He said, I think Black Adam is one of those movies that got caught in that web of new leadership. And that will always be one of the biggest mysteries to me, I think, not only for me and us on our end, but this was the interesting part, but also throughout our business. He said that everyone in Hollywood talked to him and commented on the fact that like they're surprised that they dumped Black Adam. So it wasn't just like him. It was like, other major people in Hollywood came up to him and were like, "Oh, I'm so surprised they're doing that." I like him. I just think this is more ego than anything. I agree.
I guess I like. There's been projects of Dwayne Johnson I've enjoyed lately, though. I'd say like I can't say I'm a Dwayne Johnson fan as of late. But this is either complete delusion, or if he is right and people have said this to them, I think they're just soothing his ego and not being upfront with him, because there's no way that the fact that they're not following up Black Adam should come as a surprise. Maybe like he is so disillusioned by being, this big, powerful A-lister that he just thinks that everything that he's attached to should be successful and should continue. I don't know. That seems to be, to me, what would be the most likely case here, but I can't even take that seriously. I guess I shouldn't be surprised that he's surprised, but he
also made an interesting comment about box office numbers. He said, we look at and respect the bottom line economically, but also when you think about opportunity and creating things that are fresh for our audience, which is our number one boss, when that wasn't looked at through that lens, it makes things a little more challenging for guys like you and I, referring to him and Kevin Hart. I mean, he was saying that, like, he said this before too, like, hey, we make that first movie, it makes the little money that they did. He compared it a lot to Captain America, the First Avenger, which wasn't like a huge hit, but eventually you got to Captain America Civil War, or no, Winter Soldier, and that became a bigger hit than the First Avenger. And of course, Civil War was like a huge hit. So he was trying to say, like, hey, you get that first movie out the gate, everyone doesn't really know who Black Adam is, you get them familiar with the character, and then
it's a good point.
When you make a follow-up, maybe you make more money then. I think it's hard for Hollywood to think that way.
It is, yeah, especially this day and age. But like, I just don't think that audiences resonated enough with that character to warrant. I don't think it's worth the gamble, because I looked at the budget just for the sake of this conversation, and you're right. Yeah. So it made $393 million. This is global box office. I'm assuming that number comes from.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, the budget, this is a huge disparity, but the budget is listed as between 190 and 260 million. So that's a pretty significant gap there. But regardless, say, even if it was 200 million, this movie comes nowhere near I guess in today's day and age, the golden rule is to be profitable, or to be significantly profitable. A movie with a budget like this size must make like 3 times its budget, considering like production and marketing budget, and just barely scrapes by not even 2 times that. So which I'd say would move this movie in a flop category for sure.
Right. And by the way, I think it's on the higher end of what you read, because I think COVID delays pushed the budget up
even worse than.
And that also doesn't include marketing, like you said. That's not even marketing costs in there too. So
this movie.
I mean, maybe when it's, I don't know, when it's all said and done, when you throw in like merchandising, Blu-rays, and video on demand, maybe it did. I don't know.
Ignore that.
The way Johnson's angry, like it's he like destroyed something in your room. But yeah, I actually might put it there now. Like, it barely. I mean, someone of his stature making a big DC movie, his first big DC movie, it should have made more than it made, I guess. I mean, I didn't hate the movie. I thought it was perfectly entertaining. It's not something that I would put it as like one of the greatest superhero movies ever. Like, not even close. But it was fun for what it was.
I think it suffered a lot from Dwayne's like just big mouthing and not shutting up about all the behind the scenes stuff, and trying to inject himself into the forefront of this character, and all his comments about changing the hierarchy of the DCEU. Like, if he had just kept the muzzle on, I think this movie would have been received much better, even if not like numerically, like at the box office, just in terms of like people's reception of it. But I feel like he was a detriment to that movie's success, which is unfortunate. But
I mean, I think he let his ego get in the way.
Yeah.
And he kind of, I didn't read the quote. He also mentioned the fact that, they got Henry Cavill back as Superman. He kind of boasted about all the big things that he did with Black Adam.
To have him as a cameo? Like,
yeah, but he also, like, from what I've read, he seemed like he kind of went above a lot of people's heads to get that cameo done.
Yes,
and like,
I remember that.
In the midst of like, a total regime change, like between the time that movie was greenlit and it came out, they changed hands a lot at Warner Brothers and DC Studios. So like,
true.
I mean, I could see his frustration. It's like, it's a 15-year passion project. That sucks. I mean, I get that, but he also, I think this was good for him though. I think he, like, not that I don't like him, because I think he's, his stuff outside of the like stuff he does for movies, he seems like a very good guy and all that. I just think that his ego needed a bit of a for a second
brought down a peg. I completely agree.
But I think, I mean, it's interesting that he still thinks about it, that he's still like, oh man,
I'm sure he still loses sleep over this.
I know, like, and then all my Hollywood friends in the business were like, we're surprised too. I'm like, who said that? And I agree with you. It might be people just telling you what he wants to hear.
I think so.
But I guess in other news of people talking out of turn, Stephen Amell is Canadian, isn't he?
Is he one that? I don't know.
I'm gonna look that.
You guys can have him for the moment, though. After
I was like, I think he's one of you. At least, and they filmed, of course, Arrow and stuff in
Toronto,
in Canada, in Toronto, yeah. I just want to make sure. Yes, he is a Canadian.
Does it say where
Canadian
he was
means
born,
LA.
actually? Did you just look it up? Does it say where in Canada? I'm just curious now. I would guess Ontario. There you go.
Ontario, Canada.
Right.
So I'm going to preface this by saying I was a huge fan of Arrow when it was on the CW, particularly the first 3 or 4 seasons. It did go on a little too long, but first season is great. Season 2 is probably one of the greatest seasons of like comic book TV I've ever seen. Like I love that show, and I actually thought he was actually very good on that show. Okay. But Stephen Amell has been known to put his foot in his mouth a lot, and he did some things. He did some things recently in regards to the acting strike, which made a lot of people on Twitter call him out for some stuff he probably shouldn't have done while actors were on strike. That could get him in trouble with SAG.
His face, yes.
So during an appearance for a Q&A with fans at GalaxyCon in Raleigh, North Carolina, Stephen Amell voiced his disagreements with the ongoing actor strike. He said, "I support my union. I do. And I stand with them. I do not support striking. I don't think it is a reductive negotiating tactic." And then he said, "I find the entire thing incredibly frustrating. I think the thinking as it pertains to shows like the show that I'm on that premiered last night, I think it's myopic." The show he's referring to is a show called Heels. It's on Stars. It's a wrestling show. I don't mean to like talk down on it or anything because apparently it's very well reviewed and the people that do watch it do like it. It's just not a largely seen show at the moment because it's on Stars and a lot of people don't watch Stars. Right. I will say this before I get into his comments. The second season was delayed heavily by COVID. And I know it's probably frustrating as an actor to have your second season premiere when you can't promote it at all. That being said, there are a lot of other people with stuff coming out in this time period that also can't promote their stuff, and they're dealing with it for like the greater good of what the strike means. So I'm going to say what he said after this, but like he got a lot of crap for saying that he stands with his union but doesn't support striking. He got called out by a lot of people who were like, "Dude, you were the lead on a show for 8 seasons. Like you're making a lot of money on said show." Also, where he did live at one point in Canada, they're like, their healthcare is like a lot compared to here, to LA, night and day, right? So the issue with a lot of the actors striking and here, like you make less than $26,000 a year, you're not getting healthcare. So there's that too. There's like a lot of stuff that he maybe should be, shouldn't speak on as someone who led his own show. And I know that he probably got a lot of network residuals from said show for 8 seasons. You would think that he would want to fight for a fair amount of the streaming residuals from that show, but maybe he doesn't care. He makes enough money. Who cares? I don't know if that's how he feels. I think what this comes down to is that he wanted to promote his show, and that's the big thing. Well, there's a girl on Twitter, and I don't have her name in front of me, but what she did was she saw his comments. She found a footage of him at another con 2 days after the strike started, where he's blatantly promoting Hills, and you're not really supposed to do that, right? When you're what do they
call that again? When you're union striking, and
you're a scab.
Scabbing, yes.
Yeah, you're scabbing. So he also on his social media, which has since been deleted, he would be walking by billboards of Hills in LA and taking videos and kind of hinting that people should watch it. That is still considered promoting your work, and you can't promote struck work while you're on strike,
right?
And you can break the rules and get kicked out. So that girl shared it on social media. She even emailed SAG-AFTRA about it, and she was like, "I'm not trying to be a snitch, but when someone like him says stuff like that, when they're not informed on the things that they're supposed to be saying and make a bold statement like he made, she's like, I have to call that out." Because it's not fair to the rest of us who are fighting for fair wages and fair opportunities within our union. And a lot of people were like, there are some people I saw some people that supported them, and those selling people seem to be people that clearly have stuff they want to promote. But a lot of people were like, hey, you can't say that you stand with your union and then don't stand with like why they're striking. Because like the reason they're striking is it's
completely oxymoronical or oxymoronic like saying one thing and countering it completely with his actions.
I don't know if I don't know if I should give you like his follow-up statement when he got shit for it, or if you want to respond to like what he said first.
No, go ahead. I haven't heard this response. I'd like to. There's nothing to say really in response to his original thing, other than I think it's completely ridiculous. I completely respect people having their own opinion, but I don't think there's anything in his original statement that makes any lick of sense to me. So that's really all I was thinking about hearing. So, what was the follow-up?
In his follow-up statement, he tried to kind of cover up and fix a lot of the stuff that he said. And he affirmed his support for the actors union. He said it's unconditional, but added, of course, I don't like striking. Nobody does, but we have to do what we have to do. And addressing his prior remarks about striking being frustrating and a reductive negotiating tactic, he said, I'm an actor and I was speaking for over an hour at this event. And he was like, I emote, but I certainly don't think these issues are simple. So basically trying to say like, oh, I was talking a lot and there's a lot going on. I might have overspoke. He said, our leadership has an incredibly complicated job and I am grateful for all that they do. Despite some of my terrible early acting work, I assure you I'm not a robot. From an intellectual perspective, I understand why we are striking, but that doesn't mean it isn't emotionally frustrating on many levels for all involved. He said, I'm simply sad that we don't have a chance to celebrate a show that all of us figuratively and literally broke my back for, talking about his own show, at least for the foreseeable future. I choose to stand with my union. When you see me on the picket line, please don't whip my hard fruit. Oh, yeah, put any hard fruit. So, I mean, again, this all comes down to him wanting to promote a show.
Right, clearly.
Which sounds very selfish and, just selfish. I can't think of any
I
other
agree.
way
I don't, I wouldn't say he's anywhere near like A-list status, so maybe he feels like this. I get why he'd be frustrated. Like Stephen Amell is not somebody I think a lot of people would recognize.
Know who he is.
His name.
Well,
right.
what's funny that you said that because
you
said that there's so many people underneath a lot of these stories on Twitter. They're like, dude, I had to Google who this fool was because they didn't know who he was at all. And then of course he hasn't really done a ton since Arrow. I mean, he's on a show now. It's great, but a lot of people haven't seen it. And I mean, not to say like 8 seasons of a TV show is amazing. Like it's great, and he'll forever be remembered for that show. I mean, it's in a lot of comic book circles and like comic book TV show circles. That show will be iconic in its own way. But you know, I think he's been fighting for a little bit of relevancy since then.
It would seem so.
And by putting his footage up, I will say that during the whole like George Floyd Black Lives Matter protests, when Grant Gustin Grant Gustin, who played the Flash on the CW, chose to go to said protests and like show support, Stephen Amell kind of called him out because he was supposed to be on his podcast and didn't show up to be on his podcast because he was doing that instead, and kind of made a lot of off the cuff remarks about him being there instead of being on his podcast. He also, in a blanket statement, said there are no bad cops in response to the whole Black Lives Matter movement, which,
damn, I couldn't imagine. How
and then you know how the internet is. They've just been pulling out all the receipts of him saying stupid stuff since it started.
They don't forget. The internet doesn't forget or forgive. You should know that by now.
What I will say, I will say that I think that Stephen Amell comes from a place of privilege and seems like he does, and doesn't speak in a way that, you know, I don't think he understands or represents the little guy, and I guess that's all I'll kind of say on that. That's kind of what it feels like. He's in a position where he's like, oh, like, you know, I'm an actor and I was on this show for 8 years, and like, you know, now I'm on this new show that I know had, of course, the COVID thing sucks. It delayed your show. Now this other thing is delaying your show, but yeah, there are a lot of actors that can't pay their rent, and I'm pretty sure you're okay. So, you and your wife and your kids, which is great, awesome. You guys are fine. So, like, maybe not thinking about yourself, and
sometimes it's too much to ask.
I know, and it really is. Also, kudos to everyone who used a lot of the "you have failed this city" jokes in response to in response to his comments. And I was like, I was here for it. So yeah. But you know, again, this is a tough one because he's entitled to his own opinion on the matter.
Certainly.
But I guess when it comes to something like that, if I felt that way, I think I would just like, if it's like, maybe what if I felt that way with you? I would just say that to you privately. I wouldn't like I wouldn't be at like a con somewhere. And he said, I wish those comments would have been kept private. I was like, you were somewhere where people were filming you on your cell phone, on their cell phones. Like they saw, it wasn't going to be private. Are you serious? Like he said that he also has spoken to other actors who feel like him, but then they're not saying anything. So, by the way, I think it was 98% of the union chose to strike, and he was one of them that decided that voted against it. So 98% of your union voted to strike.
Yeah.
So
clearly he's in a massive minority here.
Yeah. But so like you said, you guys can keep him now. Now I know he's Canadian. You guys, LA, you guys can have Stephen Amell. And then of course in comparison, people were showing Grant Gustin on the picket lines supporting actors. Okay. I love this whole like Flash versus Arrow because they're on the same network.
Right.
Both clearly different agendas and different things that they care about. But he was on TMZ Live. I watched it live where he was trying to explain himself, and it just made it worse. Like, at a certain point where it's like, dude, all right, you said enough. Just like, I know your people are probably like, hey, you gotta say something, but like maybe make sure what you said is like rehearsed before you go and say it, because it just now just sounded even more stupid than what you said before. So I don't know.
Yeah, like to sum it up, like I get like it'd be annoying to have to plan out and think about the repercussions of everything you say, and you should be able to just speak your mind. But when you are going to be saying things like this, I guess like divisive, you should understand too that what you say when you have a spotlight like he does, there are consequences for your actions and what you say, and you should at least know that before you're going to say these things. So it's a lesson to be learned that clearly he hasn't learned yet. But
by the way, a story that blew up on smaller trades first. It was like all the geeky ones like Screen Rant and Movie Web, Joe Blow. All the smaller ones got this first, and then it got picked up by Variety, Hollywood Reporter, Deadline. So kudos to all the small trades that saw that and they're like, oh, there's a story there. I don't think he thought his comics were gonna blow up the way they did. And now it makes me wonder, like all these other actors who are in your unit have seen you publicly say this. It makes me wonder how they would feel about working with him, like moving forward.
That's a good point. That's not going to help, I'm sure.
No, knowing that he publicly was like, I don't want to do this. I don't believe in striking, and I voted against it.
Yourself, yeah, especially when he's in the 2% that voted against.
Yeah, well,
that's
good luck on heels, and hope you get that season 3 because you're going to need it. I think.
Yeah, true that.
Jesus. All right, so we got box office real quick, and then
sure thing.
Rankings at the end.
Yeah.
All right, so another good big weekend box office wise. Barbie only fell 43% to $53 million. Still the number one movie in America for the third week in a row. But the big news is either on Greta Gerwig's birthday, day after, somewhere in there, 40th birthday. Barbie grosses $1 billion at the worldwide box office. She's the first solo female director to cross that milestone. There have been other movies that have done it with like co-directors. I think Frozen 2 are up there as far as like having co-directors. Whether or not it beats that, I mean, it seems like there's still a lot of gas in the tank for it at this point.
3 weeks old, right? That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah, I think we would have never guessed that it would be a $1 billion movie, the biggest movie of the summer. It probably will be the biggest movie of the year.
I think so. Definitely kind of soured our predictions for biggest blockbuster.
Yeah,
we went with Mission. Who would have guessed that movie would have done?
Mission Impossible, like,
crazy.
And then but kudos to everyone involved. That, like I said, we've said it before, like the whole time it's been open, that that was a project that like people like Margot Robbie was like, hey, I believe in this, like let's sell it like it's a blockbuster, and that's what they did, and it's performing like one every single day since it's open. Not to be ignored, we were wrong on our predictions for Meg 2 The Trench. What did I say? I said 25, or did I say no? It was somewhere in there, I think. Or
I wrote
30.
I can't remember. Let me pull it out here.
I think I said 25. I can't remember. You
said 25 and I went 30.
Okay, so you were right on the nose.
Okay, how did you
lucky bastard? $30 million domestic opening, down from the
on the dot.
On the knot. So congratulations.
This never happened. So
down from the 45 million opening of the first movie. But here's where the good news is the movie overseas opened to $112 million overseas. 53.7 million of that was from China alone, for a grand total global opening of $142 million. So if you're wondering why you got a sequel, this is why.
Do we see
it got really bad reviews? I mean, I guess it depends on how well it overall performs, but I think so. I unfortunately.
Do you know, has that 0% on Rotten Tomatoes that it premiered with gone up since?
Oh, I think it's like 24 or 28, so it's still pretty bad.
I have no misconceptions that this is a good movie, but like, what are professional critics expecting? I don't know why so many people were taken by surprise. Like, you're going to a fucking goofy, massive Jason Statham fighting a shark movie.
Yeah. What else do you want?
Like, it's been funny to see all these zeros come out.
Yeah. I think it's ridiculous because, I mean, if I went into that, I think I'm going to watch. I would expect a 4, and if I got a 5, I'd be all right. Cool.
Yeah, there you go.
I got a 5. And then Oppenheimer only dropped 37.6% in weekend 3 to $29.1 million. It's made $228.9 million domestically and $555 million worldwide. I think it has already surpassed Dunkirk's worldwide box office. It is, I think, the 5th highest grossing Christopher Nolan movie ever. Next up in its sights is Interstellar. So that's the next one it could possibly surpass.
Okay.
It's just crazy. This is not a summer movie at all, but it's making summer movie money.
Yeah.
So kudos to him.
I just saw it again on Sunday. So second time seeing it in theaters.
Did it? How did it go the second time?
Fantastic. Like, so I'd say the pace was just the same, but I was able to pick up a lot more. Well, was able to pick up a lot more dialogue, just stuff I missed the first time around, because even though the movie doesn't suffer very much, like it definitely has its moments where like the score, just some of the sound design kind of overpowered the dialogue, but seeing it again helped with that regard. And also was able to follow like more like who characters were and in relation to when they were brought up, but not appeared on screen. Was able to kind of connect the dots a little bit there. So it made for a more cohesive viewing, like most Nolan movies do. Many of his movies demand a few watches to really piece everything together, but this was more of a straightforward Nolan flicks. I wouldn't say that movie struggled that much, but there are so many characters to keep track of in this movie that the second watch helped a lot with that. But I would say I liked it even more upon rewatch.
Nice.
Yeah, very happy.
Nice. And you are, at least on this podcast, the movie's biggest cheerleader. So I'm glad you enjoyed it the second time around.
You.
Not to say I didn't like it. I loved it too.
You did.
When you got on this podcast, you're like, that movie, I'm looking forward to that one in July.
Yes.
Can't wait for that.
It delivered absolutely. And I'm very happy to say that. So glad we got it. And it wasn't later in the year and the strike would have messed with it, because that would have led to a very sad Jackson. Yeah.
I know. And then our boys, Leonardo, Donatello, Michelangelo, and Raphael did very well this weekend too.
Nice.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem grossed $28 million over the 3-day weekend, but it opened Wednesday when it opened, and it has grossed $43 million since opening on Wednesday. This is a movie that only has a $70 million budget. They've already greenlit a sequel and a series, so there you go.
Cool.
And it's actually really good. It's actually really good. I saw it. At a screening, and it's really good. It's pretty funny. I think it still has like a 94% on Rotten Tomatoes. I think Across the Spider-Verse is going to win that animated Oscar, but this would be a close second. I think it's going to get nominated for sure, and it's really good. I'm surprisingly good. I would recommend that if you.
Yeah, I would check it out. I love the Mutant Ninja Turtles series, but honestly, this one kind of slipped under my radar. But now that I think about it, like with Seth Rogen producing, that is a great pairing. Also, Jackie Chan's Master Splinter is like
hilarious,
awesome.
Probably like the voice work from him in this movie is hilarious. Like, he gets most of the laughs. Ice Cube gets a lot of laughs too, but it's Jackie Chan who gets. He plays one of the new. I guess I don't know if it's a new villain because I've been so detached from Ninja Turtles. But I will look up his character's name.
Okay, so he's a villain. No, okay. I remember seeing his name in the credits, but just didn't remember or didn't see like who he was attached to play. But that's awesome.
Yeah, he plays Superfly. which I don't know if that's I don't know if that's already a Ninja Turtles villain. I'm old guy, so
Not when I heard of it. I grew up on that shit.
Yeah, I had to write an article about how the first movie is still like the definitive like adaptation of those comic books, because those comic books were pretty dark back in the day. They were not like kid friendly. Like so, if you I don't know if you've seen the first movie, or it was in a while since you've seen the first last action movie, but it's super dark. Like, there's some lighthearted.
What's the first, like the 90s one?
Yeah, so 1990. It came out in 1990. It's of course like its version of New York is very dark and gritty. Like if you're gonna, it's as close to a Batman Ninja Turtle movie you're gonna get. It's like that dark and its tone. And they actually let the turtles use their weapons in the movie, like in effective ways, like they do in the comic books. By the time the second one came out a year later, parents had complained so much about the violence in the first movie, even though the first movie made a ton of money. They were like, they wanted them to tone that down. So only Donatello uses his weapon in the second one. The others don't use their weapons at all because they thought it was too violent. But I mean, it's a gritty street crime thriller basically with Ninja Turtles.
Okay. That's awesome. It's a goofy series I love so much. I love that.
Yeah, it makes no sense, but like it was
not.
And then other box office news, Talk to Me, like we said, is in 8th place, made $6.2 million, down only 39% from last week, for a grand total of $22.1 million so far. I'm going to mention this last one because this was a question I saw right before we started recording. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning so far has grossed $493.9 million worldwide. It seems like it's slowing down.
Okay. $500 million, though. That's good.
Yeah, and then this one got hit with COVID delays too, which is why the budget on this one was so huge. I mean, this wasn't intended to be. The budget wasn't intended to be as big as it was, but
what was it, 290?
Yeah, it was. This was out of their control. It was like out of their control, really. But someone said, "Do you think?" I think some things got in the way. It was the COVID delays with the budget. The release seemed like a good release until you factored in the whole Barbenheimer thing,
right?
And then it feels like you kind of got lost in the shuffle. So, like this guy Movie Files on Twitter was like, "Do you think the release date was wrong, considering you only got like 1 week of premium screens? And do you think, despite what it made, Dead Reckoning Part 1, do you see Dead Reckoning Part 2 improving on that gross when it comes out? Like, will people be more interested in that following this? Like, maybe this was just like a hiccup for reasons that it couldn't really control."
I don't think Dead Reckoning 2 is really in any hot water. At least I don't have any reason to think so yet, even though I could say, like, I would classify Dead Reckoning Part 1's box office performance as disappointing, just hearing these numbers. I still think there's a lot of time for it to do well when it comes to streaming and even home release. Like, this would be one, and it's a series with proven longevity. People still really like these movies, and I'm sure that it will have a following post theaters. So there's still money to be made, even if it's not in theaters. But to answer the part of its release being wrong, I mean, hindsight's 2020, right? You can't really know in advance how it's going to do, but I definitely think putting some distance between that and Barbenheimer's release would have been a good move. I think this movie definitely would have competed against Indy and should have came out maybe late June or earlier in July than it did. I think that's where I would have put it, but I get not wanting to compete with an IP like Indy, but seeing after how Dial of Destiny was coming out of Cannes was early enough in the year, I would think that there would have still been time to maybe projected how badly that movie was going to do and maybe kind of bunch it up closer to the release of Dial of Destiny. But again, you can't see these things coming. So, but if they were to do it again, that's when I would suggest putting that movie out. But what are your thoughts?
I kind of feel the same way about you. I think there's a lot of stuff there are a lot of factors that there's nothing they could do about it, right? You couldn't control what COVID did to the movie and how much it delayed it, how much it like ballooned the budget, because it wasn't the intention to cost as much as it did.
Right.
And then you can't predict what Barbie and Oppenheimer are going to do a week later.
Right.
So, and it's I think bad timing, and by bad I mean just like, it's just a lot of competition that even Tom Cruise can't really do anything about. I mean, there was just a lot, and like I said, this has always been more of a international franchise anyway. But yeah, I don't think Dead Reckoning Part 2 is in any trouble. I think with a proper like marketing campaign and make sure when you look at the release calendar, like make sure. I mean, I'm sure it has a date. I think it already has to have a date for its release, but like make sure you look at it and be like, what's around us what's coming out the week before and the week after. Maybe look at that a bit more and maybe figure out a way for the movie to hang on to those like premium IMAX screens a little longer, because I think that probably would have helped too, because it certainly helped Top Gun. And I know I don't want to compare it too much to Top Gun Maverick, but
right,
that Top Gun Maverick made a lot of money on its IMAX screen. So like, I mean,
that's right.
I understand Tom Cruise's initial frustration for only having him a week. I know that's why he got that weird Wednesday release schedule, so he could have them longer.
Right.
And everyone was like, well, Ninja Turtles did the same thing. I think Ninja Turtles did that just to take advantage of the fact, like, hey, we're coming into August. Some kids are getting ready to go back to school.
Right.
A lot of kids go back to school a lot earlier than I did when I was that age. Like,
right.
I didn't go back to school until September. I'm hearing kids getting like, I'm getting ready to go back in like a week. I'm like, what?
Yeah,
so
that's it was really... September for me too, going through school. It was first or second week of September mostly, but yeah, August is still summertime.
Yeah,
but that was an appropriate release for TMNT for sure.
Yeah, it was. So that works for that. It doesn't really work for Mission Impossible. But no, I think Dead Reckoning Part 2 is in a good spot.
Yeah.
Now, what could I thought that was going to be the last one, but the way they talked about it, I guess it's not. You could really market that in a big way if it was going to be the last one, if it was going to be like the final Mission Impossible.
It probably should be, but Tom has said that he wants to make these as long as he can, which I understand where he's coming from, but I think he still has a lot left to give Hollywood and could do other projects, but I want the series to go out on top and not just falter.
Yeah.
Like it.
Oh, and I also want to make a comment too while I'm thinking about it. All the really crazy ultra conservative people, Ben Shapiro, whoever, there's a lot of people that talked about how like Barbie was going to fall off a cliff after its huge opening weekend. Well, now it's made $1 billion, and all these people have not said a word. They have not spoken up like they were speaking up before the movie opened. I'm just like, if you're gonna like talk a lot of heaping shit, just keep it going. If you like, I mean, like, have a reason. Like, you know, next week when the movie does well a week later, have a rebuttal. I don't know. I think it's just really funny when it's just like, yeah. I know for sure this is gonna tank next week, and then said project doesn't tank, and then now it's radio silence.
I did see too that, like, I didn't read much into it, but I did see how like Ben Shapiro's reaction to it, and did see his comments about it plunging off a cliff after, but he's in no position to be making any credible box office predictions. That guy doesn't know shit all about the movie industry. Definitely,
I think we know more of this one.
Yeah, certainly, definitely not a target audience for that movie. It doesn't surprise me to hear that he wasn't a fan of it, but oh well, boo-hoo. I still haven't seen it yet. I still plan to. I might go see it actually at a drive-in here this coming weekend. So,
no, drive-in still big where you're at?
No, not big at all. We do have one in like a kind of a remote town, like an hour and a half from where I live, and it's the only one that I know in this province. But it is I did grow up going there in the summertime, so I would love to go see a movie there again. Been a long time, but hoping, because I definitely want to cash in on this Barbenheimer phenomenon while it's still in theaters, and I'm kind of kicking myself that I haven't yet, but I will still plan on seeing it.
I mean, I think the way it's playing, it'll be in theaters for a while. So I think you have, I think you have time. And as far as predictions this week, guys, we're not going to do them because we didn't feel too excited about predicting the last voyage of the Demeter, which is the only new wide release this weekend.
Kind of in a little lapse here for theatrical releases. Although this is a movie
it looks interesting to you, but to me, it like screams late August release. Like, let's just dump it here.
Does. It does. How many times have we gotten January horror dumps and been surprised? Right?
No, they've been good. Like, like I don't want to call Megan a January dump because it did come out in January, but it ended up doing pretty well, and it was good. And it January as well. So they can, and September used to be that way too until it happened. So it still screams, let's dump it in August. I mean, maybe I'll be wrong.
And I am under no impression that this movie is going to be fantastic by any means, but I will admit, from the promotional material I have seen from the last voyage of the Demeter, it has enough to make me want to go see it. I, in particular, to like just Dracula stories, and I think it's nice to kind of divert from like the traditional Dracula narrative and just to have it set on a boat at sea and him kind of picking off the crew. The creature design, what we've seen from the trailer, looks awesome, if you ask me. And I really like who seems to be the lead in the movie. I can't remember. He's from
Corey. He's from not Corey Hawkins. Are you thinking about the back? Are you thinking about Corey Hawkins or the other?
No, I'm thinking of the guy that plays Davos in Game of Thrones. I can't remember his name. He's Scottish or Irish, I think. I think his name might be Ian. Anyway, I really am a fan of the lead there. I think he'll be awesome. He's got a great voice. So yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, that was one of those movies this weekend where I asked my brother, he was like, "Is anything coming out?" And I looked it up, and he's like, "Well, I guess we have nothing else to do."
Are you gonna go see it?
I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. I got invited to a screening, like I told you before we did it, and it was like you can't bring a guest. It was like, oh, only media, and I was like, well, I don't want to see it alone. If I do see it,
right,
that's not a fun movie to go by yourself to.
I might use you as the gauge and see if it'd be worth seeing. If you do end up going to see it, I want to know what your thoughts are because I think it could be intriguing enough, even if it's not fantastic.
And since we're not doing predictions this week, we will come back next week with 2 movies that will be for Blue Beetle and Stray. It's 2 very different, different movies. And you know what? Someone made a good point, and because I've been forgetting to do this, and I will start remembering to do this after this week. We will start asking you for your box office predictions again, and then sharing them on social media. We were doing it for ourselves for a long time, and people said they liked doing it with us, so we will bring that back for Blue Beetle and Strays. So yeah, and then we have one more thing to wrap us up, and this is I guess not your idea, but it's your idea. That's something you found on
something exactly. Just to preface, so we're looking at breaking down our top 10 movies of the decade so far. So looking at movies released in the 2020s exclusively, and this has just been a trend that I've seen on TikTok lately. I wish I had jotted down the creators that I had seen do this so I could give credit. Maybe in the future I will do that. I just didn't think to. I just had the idea, but for whatever reason, a few people that I follow on Movie Talk, as it's dubbed, have been sharing. I don't know what about 2023. It's not even the midway point of the decade yet, but people have been sharing their top 10s. I mean, we are 3.5 years into the decade, so I thought this would be a cool exercise for us to do. Do you want to approach it like how we did with Nolan and just go back to back, starting from 10 to 1?
10 to 1, yeah, sure. And
admittedly, for sure. Thank you. Admittedly, this is one that I didn't really take the time to really. There's some that I am happy where I have them, but others that I think could really be rearranged. Like there was no definitive list, but in my number 10 spot, I think this movie does hang up in quality, but in terms of this sheer phenomenon this movie was, I'm going with Top Gun Maverick in my 10 spot.
Oh, what's up? That was my number 10.
No, hey, nice.
that was my number 10.
Nice. You go ahead and do 9 then, since I took your steam, but that's funny because
no, that's cool. I kind of was I knew it would be towards the bottom.
Right.
I did because I can't we can't underestimate how important it was, and it actually was a lot better than I think all of us thought it was going to be.
It was just a treat overall. Saw that 3 times.
Yeah, but it also could also be easily knocked out by something that'll come out. Who knows? Even by the end of this year. So
exactly.
At number 9, I put this one low, but I think it will change. But it's because it came out so recently. I felt weird putting it higher, but I have Across the Spider-Verse at number 9.
Oh, you know what? That, for whatever reason, didn't even cross my mind when I was making this list, but that is a well-deserved spot. That movie was fantastic.
Yeah, actually, the more I think about it, the more I enjoyed it. But yeah, I think maybe with time I can move it up, but it came out so soon that
Fair enough. Well, I have a really recent release near the top of my list, so I will hold you. I have a lot of 2022 on this list, actually. Nice. My 9 spot is also a comic book movie, and it is The Batman.
I have it on here, but it's higher up.
Oh, okay, nice. Well, I wish I had it higher. I was just thinking more of filmy movies at the top of my list more than kind of wider audience appreciated ones, but it would be remiss to not have that on the list. So that's my 9.
Yeah. All right. And number 8, I put Pearl, which is the only horror movie. Surprisingly, the only horror movie I have on.
And we've had a lot of great horror, but I mean, I'm not surprised to hear none of there's not much for best of the decade yet. I'm sure we'll have a couple by the end of the 2020s on there, but I'm not surprised by that. Great movie. Didn't make my list, but one of my favorites, certainly even of last year. My 8.
Everything.
Yeah, I'm here for the Gothessance. I crossed out, and I'm so sad I did this because I loved this movie, but I replaced All Quiet on the Western Front with Licorice Pizza as my number 8 because I loved Licorice Pizza so much, and I can't wait to see it again.
I gotta see it again.
Yeah. Did it not resonate
I saw
with
it
you?
like not the first time, but
No, I think I remember us talking.
I think
about
I should see it again. I think I should see it again.
Yeah,
because it's nowhere on my list, but I think I should give it another shot.
I'm a big
PTA
stan, so
yeah, I love his movies too.
Yeah.
I think I probably should give it another shot.
Definitely worth.
And it's funny because I saw All Quiet on the Western Front. I was looking at other people's kind of lists, and that popped up a lot too.
Yeah, same here.
Another movie I should probably pay more attention to.
So phenomenal.
But was it? Number 7, I actually have After Sun, which I ended up loving a lot more than I thought I would.
Yep.
Just quiet, intimate movie with a really solid central performance in it. Very touching too. So definitely resonated with me and stayed with me long after it was over. So
your description is a lot like my number 7. I'm really glad to hear After Sun made your list because that movie has a special place in my heart. But my 7 is Power of the Dog, which I think are very comparable movies. Yeah. Was really
also too I forgot what country Netflix is actually getting rid of Power of the Dog, even though it was a Netflix like original. They're taking it off the streaming service, which is another example about owning physical media and why that's important and why everything needs a physical release, because at one point you don't know when someone's going to get trigger happy and take it off for whatever business.
You said it's just one country that they're removing it from.
I forgot which one. It's not here in the U.S. I forgot. I can look it up while we're going through the list. But it was on Twitter. They were sharing it a lot, where people were like, "I'm so sick of this happening." If it happens to a movie that's a Netflix original and it gets taken off of their then maybe nothing gets saved.
They do. I don't know if they do all of their releases like a physical copy, but I have 2 Criterions of Netflix originals. I have Marriage Story and The Irishman, both on DVD Criterion. So I would expect one that was as coveted as Power of the Dog would have a physical media release, and if there ever is one, I'm going to know to snag it if it's facing the chopping block anywhere. Yeah, that sucks.
Let's see. It's I'm trying to figure where it's leaving from. Okay. I'll look it up while we're.
It's not really. It was more like clarifying that you'd said that it was just one country. Not
yes. Netflix UK.
Oh, really?
Is really removing it from their platform.
Odd.
Which is so weird.
Yeah.
Very, very weird. But yeah, that's it. Power of the Dog was really good. I actually really enjoyed it. Actually, that's another movie I need to rewatch too.
I think so too.
I rewatched it all through that award season, and then I didn't watch it after that. But yeah. Enjoyable.
Number hit me after. Sorry.
Yeah, for sure. Number 6, I went with Dune Part 1. I guess we'll call it Dune Part 1.
Yeah. Nice.
It was hard not to top 5. It actually like switched it with the number 5 I had, but the number 5 one I really, really liked. But yeah, it was a tough one. I kept like doing a lot of this.
Right. I have a little bit of that here too. Sad that one didn't make my list. The 3 years we've had have been really strong.
I'm surprised that didn't make it. I think because I felt like that'd be like on yours somewhere.
If I were to do this tomorrow, I'm sure it would be. Like now I'm just but again, I did this really briefly, so my 6 is where After Sun landed though, so I won't take up much time talking about that one. You hit the nail on the head with your description of it. Love that movie. I can't wait to see it again, and gonna be picking that one up on Blu-ray as soon as I see it.
Yep. My number 5, which was switching around with Dune a lot, was Promising Young Woman. Which is like one of my favorite movies of 2020. Carey Mulligan is amazing in it, and it's really good, really dark. I mean, it's darkly funny, but then also hard to watch at certain points, especially towards the end. But it's her performance alone is so fucking good, and then the writing is just really solid across the board. Definitely want to check out if you haven't checked it out before.
I have not seen it yet. I can't believe that you just said it came out in 2020. I feel like this is a movie from not that long ago, which I mean, not that that's long, but I didn't think it was that early in the decade.
Just
my number just made the cut. My number 5 was my favorite from last year, going with Robert Eggers' The Northman. Love that movie so much.
I didn't put it on my list. I mean, I liked it.
Right.
I think more people had more love for it than I did. Yeah. But I respect everyone's love for it.
He's one of my favorite filmmakers right now.
Number 4, this might make some people happy, might make some people mad, whatever. I had so much fun with it in the movie theater. I get with Spider-Man No Way Home. I think as an individual movie, it was very good. I didn't really care about what it meant to like the greater MCU. I just really cared about what it meant for Peter Parker's story in that, and then to end it the way that they ended on a probably pretty dour note, but like a really good creative one, like screenwriting wise.
I really like the ending of that movie. I was thoroughly enjoyed through No Way Home. It was my favorite comic book movie experience in a long time. When I had seen that, I was very kind of turned off by the MCU at the point that I saw it, but I knew I should go see that one while I was in theaters, and I'm glad I did. Honestly, that movie is fantastic.
Yep.
My number 4 is, I think, my first foreign that I have on here, and the only foreign movie. But you ever seen? It's a Mad Mikkelsen movie. It's from, I think it's a Swedish film. Don't quote me on that, but it's Another Round.
I've been told to watch this movie.
Yeah,
a lot.
dude,
I haven't
watched it yet. Big fan.
Like I've been thrown that movie my direction several times.
Love that movie.
To check it out. So I guess at this one I need to.
He is awesome.
That's what I heard too, and I actually like him a lot too. Hannibal all day long.
Yes, man, that show is awesome.
Yeah. My number 3, like I said, it was higher on my list than yours. I got the Batman at number 3.
Nice.
You know what's funny is that when I saw it, and this is all me hyped up because I hadn't watched The Dark Knight in so long. I was like, I think I like it a little bit more than that, and everyone was like, calm down. Think about what you just said. Think about what you just said.
I was wearing it when I first came out of the theater. I was like, man, did that actually do it? But then I was like, okay, no, I'm being ridiculous. But that was definitely the best thing we could have got. The next best thing to the Dark Knight. Like I would say I like the Batman more than I like Dark Knight Rises. So that might just be me.
Yeah. Oh, that's hard.
I know people are very split on where they rank the Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah.
Amongst that, but I'm one of those guys that like die hard Dark Knight, and I love Dark Knight Rises, but I think I would maybe just because it's new, it has that recency bias. But talk to me in 5 years, and we'll talk again.
We'll see how this list changes. Yeah. All right, what's your number 2?
Would be number 3.
3. Sorry.
Number 3, I have probably a controversial one. I don't see why. I never understood why this movie did as poorly as it did, but I have Babylon from last year. I had such a blast watching that movie.
I actually really liked that movie.
That movie was amazing.
I'll just honorable mention it, like when you talk about Maverick.
Okay, that's how I should be doing it. But Babylon, I'm a sucker for movies about the industry, and I really liked how they approached that story, the stories in that movie.
Yeah, you're right.
Career best, Margot Robbie, Brad Pitt, amazing performance. Yeah. Diego Calva, fantastic debut.
Now I feel silly. I didn't include that. No.
I don't know.
All right. Well, at least one of us represented it. All right. My number 2, I've talked about this movie a lot. I've actually talked about it on other people's podcasts as one of my favorite movies of that year it came out. Joshua Real Smooth is number 2. I really, really enjoyed it. Dakota Johnson, Cooper Clark wrote and directed it and starred in it. It's a really fun, like, coming of age movie, and just a really solid screenplay, and also touching in the like the way After Sun Stay With Me. This one did in a different way, though. I mean, it really, like, it's interesting to think about it for someone like thinking about like what it was like to be in my 20s, like the character's age in that movie, and like kind of like, oh, like what am I doing with my life? It really touches on that. It really touches on that stuff. It touches on that stuff a lot. It would make me wonder what someone like you, who's in that kind of like vicinity, like how you would watch it. But it's really good. It's really well done. And
I'm gonna mark that down because I honestly don't know. I recognize the title. That's really, I wouldn't even have been able to tell you what year that movie came out, who was in it. I don't think we've had a discussion about it before, so that's good to know. I'm surprised.
Yeah, not really. I think I brought it up on other people's stuff. It came out in 2022. But yeah, it was. Yeah, I think I've mentioned it in other people's podcasts. So we've like talked about like their favorite movies of like the year or whatever. And I brought that one up a lot
for sure.
But it's on Apple TV Plus in case you're looking for it.
Okay.
All right.
Rounding things off, the grand finale. I mean, this might change, but right now it's Oppenheimer. That's my number 1 so far.
Oh, there. All right. That's fair.
At this point, I'm at risk of sounding like a complete like biased Christopher Nolan like stan here,
loyalist.
but like a loyalist, yeah, for sure. Hey, I'm gonna say like I think the true test of that would have been if I had Tenet on this list, and I don't think it deserves that spot. But I gotta say Oppenheimer, he did something different and special. And even if it doesn't end on my number one, if I were to reshuffle this, it would be on my list for top 10 of the decade for sure. Yeah, but yeah, that's where it's at right now.
And well, for me, points for pure creativity. Probably one of the most unique movies I've seen in a really long time.
I know where you're going.
Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. I mean, it's funny because it deals with like multiverse stuff that we've been seeing in like all these comic book movies, and yet it feels like something I've never really seen before. It felt so very unique. And I just love a movie like that kind of swept through award season as well, because that usually isn't the case with movies like this.
Certainly
and
not.
I kind of, it makes me wonder what the movie's gonna, where it's gonna stand a few years from now. If it will be looked at as something like overrated, or if it be looked at like something like people will continue to appreciate. Because I could see the tie going either way, but like
so can I now that you mention it. I had this this is on my list to cross off like when I was still making it, and it just missed out. But I think that I'm glad that you included it if I didn't.
Yeah, and it's be interesting like if we did this later, if we talk about best performances from this time period, like what that list would be like. But I think we represented it pretty well across our 2 top 10 lists. I'm still mad I forgot Babylon. I
didn't have Dune. I feel guilty about that because it's definitely one of my favorites. But you can't get them all. 10 is not a big number, and we've had a lot of fantastic movies in a short amount of time. So it's just a fun little exercise. But I'm glad we got that in.
Yeah, like we're doing this, much like we did with the Christopher Nolan thing. We'll throw our 2 lists up and see what you guys think of in the poll. I might even just break up some of this to do like a fun, quick little reel thing to put on TikTok and our socials as well. But yeah, by this time you will have voted on the Nolan one. I don't know who you're gonna like better, but like we'll see what you.
I'm so excited for those numbers. I gotta see how you feel about too.
Yeah, how you feel about this one as well. But I think you're going to see a lot more of these kind of quick little fun lists on the show because they're actually a lot of fun to do, and actually gets allows us to get to know each other's tastes a bit more. As far as
I'm always grateful for that experience because as much as we shoot the shit and learn about what we like, stuff like this is like you said, this is a great insight into our own personal tastes, which is fantastic. I like to do it. I think making top 10s might or should at least it's great reels content and be something that we could never run out of ideas to do. So if you guys are ever feeling like throwing out suggestions what we should cover, do a top 10 of or top 5 or whatever, we are open to suggestions. So feel free, guys, to throw those out at us.
Yes, nice. Well, that was a good thing to end on.
Fantastic.
Thank you for throwing it that way as well. Before he closes this out, just like to let you know, we have, like we said in the last week, we have a lot of exciting things coming up, episode wise. Like more anniversary, we have Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. Spoiler alert, I watched it recently and it was so much fun. I forgot how much fun that movie is.
I watched it today. I had such a blast.
Then we also have Halloween H2O with Mark J. Parker that we're doing as well. And then the OC and Freddy versus Jason somewhere in there. And then we're gonna actually get your picks for 3 anniversary choices, or one of the 3 anniversary choices that we're going to do for August. I won't tell you what they are, but choose wisely, guys, when you see it.
That'll be another battle.
Choose wisely, and I will say that Jackson put us in this predicament, so so choose wisely which ones you pick. But either way, all of them will be really fun to do. They're all every anniversary movie that's coming up, or in the case of the OC, a TV show, it's all so different, and I think that's what makes those episodes pretty fun because they're not the same type of movie that we're talking about all the time.
Right. So, I'm really happy with what they went with for July's because watching Curse of the Black Pearl, I was very happy that's what they landed on. So very happy with that.
That was fun. Yeah, for sure. All right, close this up.
All right, if that brings us to the end, guys, thank you so much for sticking with us through episode 113 of Back to the Blockbuster. Again, let us know if you guys have any other top 10 lists that you guys would like to see us break down. It's always a pleasure doing stuff like this on the fly. Guys, remember to check us out on Playlist's new app. It's about a month old now. You can check us out there where we're featured, or anywhere you guys get your podcast, be that Apple Music, Spotify, Google Playlists, wherever you guys get your podcast. This has been episode 113. Stay tuned to our Pirates of the Caribbean 20th anniversary episode coming at you guys shortly. And be sure to follow us and all our news on our socials, where you can find us at Back to the Blockbuster. Always a pleasure, Gaius. I will see you very shortly where we record our next anniversary episode. Pleasure joining you.
Sounds good. Always a pleasure. Peace.
Yep. Peace out, guys.
Bam. Oh, not quite. Sorry. I was like,